Hi there, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while, hasn't it? If you've been wondering where I disappeared to, well, first of all, thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. The last few months have been a mix of wrapping up some projects, sneaking in a bit of travel, and honestly, just taking some time to pause and reflect. I realized I wasn't completely happy with the direction of my YouTube channel. Now, don't get me wrong, I love sharing my pottery process. The making, glazing, the kiln openings, they're all wonderful. And they're a big part of why I started this channel in the first place. But lately, I've had this pull to go a bit deeper. When I launched this channel, I went with what felt comfortable and easy to start, tutorials and kiln openings. And I'm so proud that I managed to stay consistent with that for over a year. But now that I've found my footing, I want to start sharing the other side of the creative journey, the part we don't talk about that often. Yes, there will still be pottery videos, but I'm going to be talking more about building a creative business, from pricing to marketing to email strategy, mindset, systems, sustainability, all the good stuff. These are things that have helped me grow my practice and turn my passion into a real business, and I want to share that with you. If you're a maker, an artist, or a creative entrepreneur, or if you want to be one, I hope these upcoming videos will offer you real value, encouragement, and a bit of inspiration too. So if that sounds like something you are into, make sure you're subscribed and you hit the bell so you don't miss anything that's coming up. I'm really excited about this next phase and I'm so glad you're here for it. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Jaspreet and I'm a ceramic artist, a creative entrepreneur, and someone who knows a thing or two about taking a leap of faith. In today's video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of my journey from working in corporate banking and fintech to becoming a full-time ceramic artist and building a creative business from scratch. I'll be sharing the mindset shifts that help me take that plunge, the unexpected challenges I faced, and some honest lessons I picked along the way. So go ahead, grab your favorite cup of chai, coffee, get comfortable. Let's have a heart to heart about what it really means to choose a creative path. So, a little bit about where I come from. I was born and raised in India in a classic middle income household where success pretty much had a straightforward formula. You study hard, you study harder, get a respectable job, get married, and tick all the good kid boxes. And I did pretty much the same. I studied science in school, and like many others chasing the practical route, I went on to do an MBA in marketing and strategy. That led me straight into the corporate world, first in banking and then into fintech. The kind of career that on paper looked solid, predictable, respectable, and safe. It had a steady paycheck, clear growth opportunities, and a future I could almost see mapped out on spreadsheets. But somewhere deep inside, it just felt off, disconnected. Most days I was in meetings or glued to my laptop screen dealing with reports, sales targets, numbers, none of it actually lit me up. I remember sitting at my desk sometimes staring blankly at these spreadsheets thinking, is this it? Is this really what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life? It wasn't that I was bad in my job. I was okay, maybe even good, but I knew I'd never be great at it because my heart just wasn't in it. I didn't feel like I belonged. The truth is, I wasn't cut out for the aggressive, cutthroat energy that so much of the corporate life demands. I wasn't ruthless. I wasn't competitive in that way. And slowly, I started feeling like I was living someone else's version of success. But like most people in a stable career, I ignored that inner voice for as long as I could. I mean, who was I to complain? I had a decent job, financial security, and why rock the boat? Until one day, my husband and I, we stepped out for lunch during my office break. Something we did often, but this time it felt a bit different. I was whining as usual about how uninspired I felt, how dragging myself to work each morning felt like walking through wet cement, how I had no clue where I was going, but I knew I didn't want to be where I was. And then he just looked at me and said, quit, take a break, figure out what you really want to do. I've got your back. And I can't tell you what those words meant in that moment. It felt like someone had just reached under the water and pulled me up for air. That was the permission I didn't even know I was waiting for. I went back to the office the same afternoon and handed my resignation. I had zero plans, no business idea, no fallback career lined up. All I knew was I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. Luckily, I had some savings, and even more importantly, I had a partner who believed in me when I didn't yet believe in myself. And then, well, the pandemic hit. Suddenly, the entire world hit pause. And for the first time in years, I had nothing but time. So I did what any deeply lost person does. I started binge watching YouTube. At first, it was just random videos, but somehow I stumbled onto a pottery video and then another and another. And before I knew it, I was falling headfirst down that clay rabbit hole. And that is how I discovered ceramics. The medium that gave me my joy back, the thing that I never knew I needed so much, the art that would eventually become my career, my business, and one of the most healing parts of my life. Now, here's a fun twist. I had actually taken a few pottery classes before I ever considered doing this professionally. And surprise, surprise, I didn't enjoy them at all. I found the process confusing and weirdly stressful. Everything felt unpredictable. One minute you're shaping something with all your heart, and the next it's warped, shrunk to half its size in the kiln, and it's scratching up your dining table. It wasn't fun at all. I think what I really needed back then was a more structured approach. Some context. What is clay? How does it behave? Why is it shrinking? Why is everything, either cracking or sticking? And why do I have to wait for days before I know what it's going to look like? But that early frustration actually taught me a lot, because later, when I started hosting classes, both online and in my studio, I was very intentional about giving my students a solid foundation. I didn't want anyone walking away thinking clay is just, messy and chaotic and not for them. But anyway, backing up to the post resignation me, I now had time on my hands and a desire to explore something new. And thanks to the YouTube algorithm, a sudden obsession with pottery videos. So I went out, bought my very first bag of clay, a couple of very basic tools, and set up a tiny corner in a spare room. And I started experimenting, just playing around. I then started sharing my work on Instagram, not with any grand plans really. But to my surprise, people responded. The comments, the encouragement, and even the request to purchase my work started coming in. That tiny spark of joy I felt when creating with my hands grew into this realization that maybe this could be something more. But even then, doubts crept in. Could I really turn this into a business? Would anyone actually pay for this? Was this just a phase? Now, let me be honest. One of the biggest questions that haunted me at the very beginning wasn't how to make pottery. It was, pottery isn't a real career. Really? You want to be a potter? I mean, I had a fancy degree. I'd spent over a decade in the corporate world. I was surrounded by people who were becoming CTOs, CFOs, heading departments, managing global teams. And here I was trying to make mugs out of mud. It felt ridiculous at times. So, pottery in my world was something you did as a hobby, a cute weekend thing, not something you gave up your career for. And certainly not something you told your Indian relatives with any pride. Like, what do you do now? Oh, I make ceramic platters. I mean, you can imagine the silence that followed. So, yes, a huge part of my struggle was internal. My mindset, the environment I grew up in, the conditioning that said creative careers are second class. They're reserved for housewives, retirees, or people who couldn't make it elsewhere. Not for someone with my background. And even if I silenced those voices for a moment in my head, there was another equally scary question. Can I actually sustain myself with this? Can pottery pay the bills? And like every responsible millennial, I turned to the internet for answers. I scoured forums, Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and let's just say the outlook was grim. The overwhelming message was no, you can't make money with pottery. Uh, Pottery is too much work. It's too slow. It's too expensive to scale. So, honestly, it was all really disheartening. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. So, I kind of flipped the script and started asking a different question. Who has actually done this? Who has taken something creative and turned it into a thriving business? And once I started looking with that lens, wow, I found so many examples. Potters, painters, photographers, illustrators, candle makers, people who were building beautiful, sustainable, creative lives. Now, to be fair, if I'd found even two examples at that time, I probably would have jumped in still. That's how badly I wanted to believe it was possible. Also, coming from the corporate world, I knew I didn't want to treat this as just a hobby. I wanted a bit of structure, I wanted strategy, I wanted it to be sustainable. So I made a conscious decision to surround myself with that energy. I invested in mentors, I followed artists I admired, I binge listened to podcasts, I read books, and even went through a couple of online courses. Was I aware that this was a classic case of confirmation bias? Absolutely. But in this case, that bias worked in my favor. And let me tell you, it made all the difference. It collapsed my learning curve, it shifted my mindset, it gave me the belief that yes, a creative life was possible for me too. Since then, I've made it a rule. Every single year, I invest in one high value mentor or course, not just to stay updated, but to keep expanding what I know is possible. Also, I love learning. I get excited about things I know nothing about, but the key difference is this: I implement what I learn every single week. Now, I'll be honest, there have been times when I didn't really follow through. I took a course, did nothing with it, and guess what? Nothing changed. There was no growth, there was no change, there was no momentum. And that's the truth, Learning without action is simply entertainment, it's just a dopamine hit. If there's one thing you take away from this video, just one, it's this: take action on what you know, test it, tweak it, apply it. That's the only way you grow. And you can see how fired up I get about this. But seriously, action is the magic sauce. It's how you turn your dreams into something real. Anyways, circling back to those early days, the days that started out doubt filled, but slowly, bit by bit, began to feel hopeful, even exciting. There was this beautiful shift happening, in my life. I started waking up with a purpose. And for the first time in years, I actually wanted to get out of bed. Gone were those mornings when I dragged myself through the motions, dreading the day ahead. Now I couldn't wait to get into my little studio space, to get my hands in clay, to build something of my own. At that point, I don't think I had any grand plans. I mean, I didn't even have a real business model, no marketing strategy. Just me, a spare room, a bag of clay, and this incredible aliveness that comes from creating. And I only focused on building my craft. And because it was the pandemic and the world had pretty much come to a standstill, there were no distractions. There were no social gatherings, there was no travel, no dinner plans, no weekend getaways. So just long, quiet, uninterrupted days. And I went all in. I worked ridiculously long hours. I would lose track of time. I'd look up and it'd be 2 a.m. and I was still fiddling with my forms and shapes. And honestly, it was one of the most transformational seasons of my life. Starting from zero and slowly building something real, something tangible, something that was mine. Up until then, I never saw myself as particularly ambitious. I thought I had simple dreams, quiet life, decent job, nothing extravagant. Okay. But when I found pottery, everything changed. Suddenly, I wanted more. I wanted this to work. I wanted to build something. It's hard to explain, but it truly felt like a piece of the puzzle had clicked into place, like I had found where I belonged. Now, it might sound dramatic. You touched clay and suddenly you found your purpose, but yes, that's exactly how it felt. It's like everything I didn't even know I was missing, it just kind of came rushing in. And if you've never worked with clay, I get it. This probably sounds like a whole lot of woo woo rambling. But for those of you who have, you know exactly what I mean. There's this calm, this stillness, the sense of being fully present that clay demands. And it holds you in a way that nothing else quite does. Now, looking back, I think timing played a huge role too. The world was collectively going through something we'd never experienced before. There was a lot of fear, there was grief, there was anxiety. Everything was uncertain. And personally, I was also going through one of the hardest, most harrowing times of my life. So maybe that's why clay felt even more powerful. It kind of became my sanctuary, my escape. Working with clay gave me this sacred space where everything else, the noise, the chaos, the heartache, it all just fell away. It was just me and the mud. And in that space, I slowly started healing and I started dreaming again. And yes, I absolutely believe that circumstances helped shape that path for me. If the world hadn't slowed down the way it did, I don't know if I'd have had the courage or the quiet to follow this through. But I did, and slowly what started as a bit of therapy turned into craft. What was once an outlet, it began to feel like a calling and eventually started becoming a business. A business built on intention, on passion, and a whole lot of messy, joyful learning. Now, I wish I could tell you that the transition from corporate to creative life was smooth and effortless, but it wasn't, not by a long shot. There were moments of doubt, financial anxiety, creative blocks, and plenty of imposter syndrome. But over time, a few key mindset shifts helped me not just survive, but actually thrive in this new life. And I want to share those with you because these were game changers for me. Choose your own race to run. One of the biggest breakthroughs I had was the moment I decided I'm not running the same race anymore. Leaving the corporate life felt like stepping off a treadmill that had been on high speed for years. I was done chasing promotions I didn't care about, done measuring success by someone else's ruler. I had never really felt proud of the work I did in my corporate life. But today, when I say I'm a potter, I'm an artist, a creative business owner, my face lights up. And I say it with so much pride. That doesn't mean that I'm the most successful artist out there, or it doesn't mean that I make the best pots or the most money. It just means that I chose a life and a version of success that feels true to me. And that's a race I actually want to run. Believe that it's possible for you. Because belief is the foundation. If you don't believe it's even possible, you won't take the actions needed to make it real. When I was starting out, I was actively looking for people who had done what I wanted to do, artists who build successful businesses, makers who are doing this full time. And honestly, I needed that reassurance at that time because this path, it is not easy. It is full of unknowns. And some days, self doubt gets really, really loud. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with people on a similar journey. Find your community. It could be a few online friends, a local group, or a mastermind, or even just a person, just one person who truly gets it. Share your stories, share your wins, share your struggles. Don't keep them to yourself, because every time you share a tiny breakthrough or a hard learned lesson, you're not just helping yourself, you are lighting the path for someone who might be just a step or two behind you. I don't think this journey is meant to be walked alone. Learn, implement, repeat. I've always loved learning. I'm just curious by nature. But the real transformation came when I stopped hoarding knowledge and actually started implementing it. Now, every time I take a course or work with a mentor, I set one simple rule: apply what I learn immediately, even if it's messy, even if it's scary. Because information without action, I think it's just procrastination in disguise. Failure isn't the end, it's part of the deal. You will fail, okay? It's inevitable. You will make bad pieces, you'll underprice yourself, you launch something no one buys. I've done all of them and then some. But what changed was this: I stopped seeing failure as a signal to stop. I started seeing it as a natural step in the journey. Every stumble brought me closer to something that worked. And that mindset gave me the resilience I didn't know I had. Patience and consistency leads to magic. In the beginning, I wanted results yesterday. I wanted followers, I wanted sales, I wanted the validation. But real meaningful growth, that takes time. It is built brick by brick, post by post, a kill node by kill node. What moves the needle isn't overnight success. It's showing up day after day after day, even when it feels no one's watching. And let me tell you, people are watching, even if they're silent right now. So, if you're someone who's sitting with that quiet dream in your heart to turn your passion into something more, to build a creative business, to leave behind what no longer feels aligned, then I hope the story reminded you that it is possible. You don't need to have it all figured out on day one. I certainly did. I started with one bag of clay and zero expectations, but I took a step and then another, and every single step taught me something I never could have learned from a plan on paper. So if you're waiting for clarity or confidence or the right time, this is your sign. Start small, start messy, start scared, just start. And trust that the path will unfold as you walk it. If you've made it all the way to this point, thank you. Truly, it means the world that you chose to spend your time here with me. And if this story resonated with you, if you saw a little bit of yourself in my journey, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, or share this video with someone who might need a little hope today. And I want the space to be a conversation. So if you have any questions, if you're curious about something, or if there's a topic you'd like for me to dive into in a future video, drop it in the comments. I read every single one of those. Until next time, keep creating, keep believing, and remember, it's never too late to begin. See you soon.